going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I am your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, my guests are the homies over at the DWO, the Dad World Order, for those who don't know. But you're going to find out soon as we break into today's episode. But before we do that, I've got to do one thing real quick, and that's send a shout out to my wife and life partner, Leah Roman, which the day that this drops, which will be Wednesday, the 7th of August, it is the day before my third wedding anniversary. We've been together for 10 years total, married for 3. And man, it was, I'm not even saying this just to say this, it was one of the best moments of my life, marrying the love of my life. And we had literally, you could not have asked for a better wedding and a better honeymoon. Our honeymoon was off the chart, especially when you're a dork like me. I mean, we were Harry Potter world, Star Wars, whatever. It literally was one of the best weeks of my entire life. And again, special happy anniversary to my wife, Mrs. Roman. Love you more than anything. Don't know what I'd do without you, even though you find it very funny to drive me crazy and my reactions. Like most women, I'm sure, do to their spouses, but I don't live with them. I live with you. But regardless, it's one of my favorite things about you. Mwah. Love you, my wife. But anyway, enough of the mushy shit. Let's go ahead and get to my sponsor today, and then my interview with the DWO. All right, everybody, it's time to stop and let you know about today's sponsor of the show, Crazy Martin's in Piqua, Ohio, one of my favorite places in the entire world to go to. Crazy Martin's has provided their customers with quality products for over 20 years, from ashtrays to water pipes and everything in between. Stop in, check out their selection, and of course, check out their pinball machines. With over 20 pins to choose from, there is something for everyone. Crazy since 1996. I don't just say this about every place. I love going to Crazy Martin's. I've always loved going to Crazy Martin's ever since I was of age to go to Crazy Martin's. It's one of my favorite places in the entire world. Me and my wife go there almost every Sunday to play pinball machines. It is one of the funnest spots in Ohio you could possibly find. It is in Piqua, Ohio. Check out their website at www.crazymartins.com. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of The Rose Show. As always, I am your host, Jay. Who else but me? And today, this one's kind of different for a lot of reasons. Different first reason, this is the official episode number 1, where I've had 4 people on at once. And this is the actual interview kind. It's not like, when we go live and we just bullshit and smoke weed and drink beer online and talk about Rikishi being a juggalo. No, this is going to be an actual interview of some sort with 4 people for the first time ever right here on The Rose Show. And it is also different because my guests today are usually the ones doing what I'm doing. Only it's 3 of them and typically one of me in their seat. So we're going to change it up here a little bit. I thought, why not? Let's do something different and let them be the ones to sit back and have the questions asked of them, if you will. It is Wrestling T-Shirt Guy Cephas. It is Big Rig, a.k.a. Eric. It is Mr. Magnificent, a.k.a. Mike. And yes, their first names are actually the a.k.a. in this instance because that's how I know them. So that's how we're going to refer to them in this episode. It is the DWO. If you're doing good, go ahead and throw this up for me real fast. Woo! What is going on, fellas? How we doing?
Hell yeah.
How the heck are you?
Fantastic. Honk if you hear me, baby. Let's go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So today, what we're going to do is we're just going to bullshit because that's what you guys like to do on your show. So that's what we're going to do today. And only we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to talk about some things a little bit more loose when it comes to professional wrestling fandom anyway, per se, for each of us. Because I think what makes everybody gel when it comes to like your best wrestling homies almost is that typically everybody likes the sport of professional wrestling, but everybody's got a little bit different tastes. So I kind of just want to break into the weeds a little bit. But before we do that, I want to get everybody's backstory because I'm always interested to hear how people got into wrestling. For instance, I've said this multiple times, not I think on the interview I did with you guys, but also on my show as well, right here on the Rose Show. It's strange because my very first memory in life, not my very first memory as a fan, my very first memory in life is watching Big Boss Man on TV. And I had the old school blue wrestling ring from like the late 80s, early 90s. And the little tiny Big Boss Man where all he did was like his arm went up and shit like that. I had that. And I remember watching Big Boss Man wrestle on TV. And I had these two wrestling figures. I want to say the other one was Macho Man. I can't remember specifically, but the fact that I can even remember, I'm pretty sure I was like 3 or 4. Like that's how far back this memory goes. So professional wrestling has always been imprinted in my brain, and for some reason that was my earliest memory, and that's caused me to be a fan. So the fact that I have such a quite honestly strange memory of professional wrestling, how I got into it, intrigues me to ask other people how they got into it. So Cephas, who wrestling t-shirt guy, for those who don't know, is Walmart We Love Wrestling admin by the name of Cephas. So that's what I will be referring to him as, because that is how I know him for future reference. So Cephas, how did you get into a professional wrestling fandom?
So I kind of always been into it as well. I kind of always remember it, but the time I think that really stuck with me, I always say Stone Cold brought me in, but when I was a kid in 1997, we went to the Alamo Dome and I saw him win the Royal Rumble. And
Mm,
I was almost, I think I was 9 years old, about to be 10. And I think that was the moment where I was like, okay, like this is for me.
mm,
Like I'm going to be obsessed with this. And it got bigger and better with the Attitude Era. I mean, all the way up until high school, it was the coolest thing in the world, and then
yeah.
I did it for a little while. I did a little bit of indie wrestling, if you will, but it just wasn't for me. But I know I definitely still loved wrestling. So, I did everything I could to just kind of be a fan. And then lo and behold, I met these guys. And
Yeah. Did you grow up in Texas?
so I was born here, but I was raised in Texas back and forth.
Okay.
I think when I was, I can't remember the exact ages, but by the time I was in, elementary school, I was in Texas. I think I did
Okay.
kindergarten in Ohio, but either, back and forth. But the majority of my adolescence until I was about 13 was Texas. And then when
So
I,
then let me ask you this before we go on to Big Rig then, because I've always been curious, and I think this might be the first time I've ever had a conversation with a wrestling fan in Texas. When you go back, or was raised in Texas anyway, when you go back and watch documentaries, whether it be the rise and fall, I forget how that's worded, whatever, the truth and triumph of WCCW, documentaries that are based in the South, they always talk about how important professional wrestling was in Texas.
oh
And
yeah,
you go and you listen to interviews with Bruce Pritchard, whatever it might be. He talks very highly. They all do. Everybody from back then talks about Texas. Was wrestling that hype in Texas as they make it out to be?
absolutely, man. Especially where I come from, it was the best way to describe it is Tex-Mex. There was about 50% white people, 50% Mexican people were in the cities that I lived in, and the Mexican people brought their luchador stuff to it, and the gringos brought their American style of wrestling. And where I lived, it was like if you weren't a fan of some type of wrestling, you weren't cool. You know what I mean? There
Yeah,
was people that watched only exclusively Mexican stuff. There was people that only watched the WWE, but everyone in my school, that was like wrestling was the Friday night lights, if you will. You know what I mean? It
sure.
was that's what the school gave a shit about was wrestling, and it's honestly kind of where I got into being a hippie about wrestling, a hipster, if you will. Like I want all the organic stuff. You know what I mean? And I got used to it
Yeah.
there because it was not just WWE.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Big Rick, let's go ahead and go on to you. Same question, my man. How did you become a wrestling fan?
Um, well, it was always watching it over at a friend's house because I didn't have cable growing up. So like every once in a while, I'd catch it like syndicated on a local station and stuff, but it was very few and far between. But I was born in '89, so I grew up. I was an Attitude Era kid.
Mm,
Probably shouldn't have been watching it when I was 6, 7 years old, but I remember. I
sure.
mean, I was 9 years old when Mick Foley got thrown off the cage by the Undertaker, and that's my core memory right there. Like I remember
Yeah.
sitting there watching that at a friend's house and just being like, "This is fucking awesome." Like this,
Yeah.
and it wasn't just him getting thrown off. It was him coming back to the ring. I was like,
Yeah.
"There's no way. There's
Yeah.
absolutely no way this is happening right now." And he's been. I mean, obviously, that's my guy.
And the
I got
commentary that went along with it to
yeah,
that. With
Jr. Just
JR going, that sick son of a bitch is smiling or whatever you
yeah.
wanted that.
By
Yeah, it
God,
just
he
made it.
killed him. Like
Yeah.
like just as God is my witness, he's broken in half.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Terry Funk coming out there and just I had no idea who Terry Funk was at the time. Now like looking back, I'm like
Mm-hmm.
that was really cool. But just from then on, it was me and my buddies playing wrestling video games and this and that. And I remember my dad bought me. I had a PlayStation 1. He bought me WCW versus the World on
Oh, such a
PlayStation
great
1.
game.
Loved it.
Not
I
W
played the shit out of it.
by
And
far, probably the shittiest gameplay in any wrestling game ever, but it did not matter
no,
in the even. It didn't. Oh,
no, it was awesome. And
yeah.
here's the funny thing is I was like, I just played as Sting all the time because that's who I knew. Like Sting was the shit, right? And I actually was researching it a while back because I'm like, that was a fun game. And I'm like looking, through it. I didn't realize that like half the roster was like All Japan and New Japan guys,
Right.
but it wasn't their actual names because they didn't have rights to them. So like Antonio Inoki was in that game.
Right. Yeah.
And like as a kid, I just wanted to win with Sting all the time. So I wasn't going to put him up against the really good guys with the good stats. I was putting him up against the wrestlers who were no names. And I'm sure that I beat the shit out of Antonio Inoki and, all these All Japan and New Japan guys that were in the game, but I just thought they were like filler guys. You know what I
Right. Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I didn't have the respect for it back then that I do now, and it just kind of makes me laugh. Like I was just beating the shit out of everybody with Sting, and there were absolute wrestling legends that I could have been playing with.
Right. So, okay. Interestingly enough, you said your core memory was Taker versus Mankind.
Yes.
I was watching that one I wouldn't say accident. I was born in 86, so I'm not too far from you. I'm only 3 years older than you. But I was at my dad's house in Georgia. We were staying with her for the summer. And just out of nowhere, he was like, "Hey, King of the Ring's on. You want to get this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." We were supposed to get it. I think I was like 12. And yeah, that match happens, and it's me, my dad, my two sisters, and even my two sisters who hated professional wrestling. We were all just like in just. I don't even want to say we were shocked. I don't think we
And
could believe what
enthralled.
we were watching. Yeah, enthralled. That's a perfect word for it. Yeah. Yeah, so I was definitely glad I got a chance to see that live, and it's so odd. You go back and you really watch that. That shit should have never happened. Like now in
No, absolutely not.
retrospect, you know what I'm saying? Like, but
Yeah.
at the time, you go back and you watch all that stuff, and at the time, it fit the time frame, and I think that's what kind of gets lost in transition when you go back and you watch some of this stuff and see some of the language being used that I could get my channel removed for if I spoke right here at this
Right.
point.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know, it was a different time period, but man, what a time period to be in. So, Mr. Magnificent, let's go to you, man. How did you first become a professional wrestling fan?
I feel like I just kind of grew up with it, man. It was part of my like Saturday morning, like kind of cartoon regimen, It was like cartoons and then Dukes of Hazzard and then Saturday morning wrestling.
Yeah.
And then, some of my earliest memories are definitely the Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man. I mean, kind of like the glitz and glamour era, I guess. I don't know what you want to call that era. The late 90s, or I'm sorry, the late 80s era of wrestling. Very character driven stuff, which was perfectly placated to someone my age. And I've always said I feel like I was very fortunate to grow up when I did because, wrestling kind of grew up with me as I became more of an adolescent, wrestling, the Attitude Era started happening and, it was just really fit the bill for me. I actually joined a college fraternity based off of professional wrestling because they were all getting together on Monday nights and watching the Monday Night Wars, and it was hanging out, partying, watching wrestling with a bunch of like-minded people. So, but yeah, no, it's just kind of been enthralled to me my entire life. I feel like, even when I'm not watching, I'm always paying attention to storylines, reading the news, all of that. Because there was several years there where I didn't watch at all. I honestly, until AEW came back around, we started talking about wrestling again, I feel like, and Eric and I started, connecting back together again, through wrestling, and man, it's been such a damn blessing.
We hadn't talked for quite a while before we started talking about
Yeah.
wrestling because we worked together, and we were really good friends, played video games all the time, stuff like that. And then I ended up moving to a different company. And I think I don't remember if I reached out to you or Ken or whoever it was. I'm like, hey, because I remember they liked wrestling, and I was just like, you guys going to AEW? It was the first Cincinnati show. And Mike was like, yeah, we're here, whatever. And we just kind of texted about it from then on, and friendship was rekindled, so to speak.
When it comes to preferences and stuff like that, Magnificent, we'll start with you and then we'll go counterclockwise. Do you think when it comes to today's wrestling, because if you go back and you go back and listen to interviews, I think Terry Funk was quoted once upon a time was saying, when you're in a match, slow down is possible. And when you think you can't slow down anymore, slow down even more. Now that's the day of like the 10-minute headlock, obviously, is what he's talking about. If you would go back and try to do that in today's standard, there's no way you'd have one show. I don't care who the hell you were. You'd have one show and then you would be done because nobody would ever come back again. Do you think nostalgia in wrestling is a good thing or a bad thing? Because I know for me, there are times where I'm like, they're doing too much. And I feel like I'm an old shit for saying that. But, the wrestling industry changes. Or do you think we have a problem where people have done too much, like the DDT is meaningless anymore? The super kick at this point is meaningless anymore. Have people just done too much to the point where we can't go back? Or what are your thoughts on what I'm trying to say here?
It all depends on how it's done. I think nostalgia is just absolutely ingrained into the fabric of wrestling, but if anybody can do a DDT, but when Jake Roberts does a DDT, it's got something extra on it. I feel like sometimes, those homages are nice to see, but it can be done more sparingly. Like the Eddie Guerrero stuff, I just feel is so just overdone. Like anybody of Hispanic, heritage whatsoever does the Eddie Guerrero thing. And it's like, maybe it just feels to me a little overdone. Like, no disrespect to Eddie Guerrero. But it all depends on how it's done.
Yeah, that's fair. Big Rig, how about you? How do you think about that? I know you're more indie centric, so you might have a different opinion on this, but what do you think?
I mean, I'm a sucker for a good callback. But it definitely, and I won't take credit for this idea, but I heard it. I believe it was Sean Ross Sapp that said it. He was saying it'd be really, because it was about the DDT, how it's meaningless now, but like Jake the Snake put everybody away with it. You can have, everybody and their mom doing a DDT, but like Jake Roberts is in AEW right now. Run a couple vignettes of him teaching somebody, hey, this is how I did the DDT. And then that's their finisher. You know what I mean? Like, something like that could be really cool to where, oh my God, he's hitting the Jake the Snake DDT. And that would be really fun in a way to still get the move over. You know what I mean? Obviously there are some moves that are just overdone, but also everything's on video now, man. I mean, like there were all kinds of, territories and indies and everything back in the day. Everybody was doing the same moves, but the only people you saw were who came to town. Sure. And now every time I open Instagram, I see 70,000 super kicks and pile drivers and this and that. So you become desensitized to it for sure.
Yeah.
And for me, I always have to find myself, because I get critical, and when I start getting too critical, I stop having fun, and that's what I don't want.
Yeah.
So what I try to find myself doing is just doing what you do in the beginning with wrestling. You just got to suspend your disbelief, man. And I understand it's okay if you want to be critical, by all means, go ahead. That is, that's all you. And there's certain stuff that, I can't even not be critical of because it's just overtly bad. Whether it's WWE, AEW, TNA, NXT, whatever. But I love a good callback, but it's like Mike said, when it's overdone,
Yeah.
and not worked on correctly. Like if you want to do a couple callbacks, like that's fine. Just do it the right way.
Right. And then Cephas, I'll get to you here in a second, but to your point, when it comes to stuff like that, I think also when I play any WWE game these days, I put the difficulty of the impact of a finishing move to the highest setting.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I do that is because when I'm playing these games, I want it to feel like it should. And what I mean by that is a finisher is called a finisher because it's supposed to finish you. And that's what everybody wants, the 1, 2, 3. Oh, last second. Everybody wants that spot. It's in every fucking match ever anymore where someone hits their finisher and kicked out. There are no protected finishers anymore. I think that is also another big problem. And not only that, can we please get rid of the signature moves that finish no one?
Nobody.
And it's not even me being critical. When Sammy hits the blue thunder bomb, I have no reason to think he's about to get this. When Seth Rollins hits the Falcon Arrow, I have no reason to think he's about ready to get that win. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think that little shit like that might have something to do with it as well.
And that's where, for the longest time, a finisher was so ingrained into us that we're just like, oh, when he hits that move, that's it. It's okay to win a match a different way. You can win it with your signature or a fit. Like, you almost don't want to call it a finisher. You just want to have a couple moves that you have named, and then win matches different ways. Win with a submission, win with a pile driver, whatever.
Backslide.
And then a backslide. Jake Christ, he won freaking 5 or 6 title defenses with a backslide. He got
look
that
what
over.
they're doing. Look what they're doing with Gunther. He doesn't have a finishing move. It's whatever he finishes you with. That was the finisher.
I want it to be. Yeah.
Right.
Do that.
Yeah.
Because that makes the match so much more. I don't know when this is going to end. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there are times where it's funny. Somebody in this video chat right now may or may have not given me their TNA account, which I greatly appreciate. But since that has happened, I go back and watch like some late Impact stuff because I quit watching TNA when Eric in the middle of Eric and Hulk, like most people. So I missed a lot of that stuff. And you go back and you watch Sting put on the laziest sharpshooters. I mean, I don't care how much belief you suspend. There's no way. Like Kurt's knees are on the mat. The whole point of a sharpshooter is the pressure of your legs being pushed up on your backside. Like that's something else I think that really bothers me.
And that's what I'm talking about. When it's overtly bad, like you can only suspend your disbelief for so long. So yeah, I get
absolutely. Yeah. Cephas, how about you, Bob?
Well, man, to touch back on what we were talking about, I think that the toothpaste is hard to get back in the tube. I think that we're past the point where we can have certain moves be the way that they are. But I also, I want to expand on what Eric said. Anything can be a finish. Anything at all. You can literally, look at what they did with Big Show when he could stop doing so many physical moves. They gave him a punch. Whether or not you want to agree with his character, he got the punch over. You know what I mean? And anything can be a finisher if you give it enough of a story and give it enough of a finish to be a finisher. You know what I mean? That's why I like what Baron Corbin did. A lot of guys in the Walmart group hate on Baron Corbin. But the fact that he went 18 months, almost 2 years, with no one kicking out of his move, and then finally once at WrestleMania, someone kicked out of his move, I think that was neat. I feel like that's what's going to bring finishers back to another level. You know what I mean? I want everyone to do that. But you're definitely right about the overusage of them. If Dolph Ziggler hits the zigzag 90% of the time and loses with the zigzag still, like they kick out, why do I care about your zigzag?
Right. Yeah.
But if Nick Namath hits it,
Nick Namath hits it, and it's different because they're paying him top star money, so they have to get their money's worth.
That's right.
Yeah. But hey, this is something else I kind of wanted to talk about here too. Cephas, me and you have talked about this with others in the Walmart chat. Which, by the way, for those that don't know, Walmart We Love Wrestling is a page I started about 3 or 4 years ago, I think, maybe even 5 at this point. And now we're getting close to 30,000 likes on this page. It's a meme page. We just try to have fun. Sometimes people are obnoxious, but we do a pretty good job crowd controlling. But we've got, I think, 5 admins. Yeah, 5 admins right now on this page. And we've got a group chat that we all just kind of, something happens, whatever, or you'll find me typically arguing with somebody, or Lou Nasty typically trying to poke the fucking flames, and Cephas will chime in and be like, hey guys, chill, it's all good. Like, we all have our roles, right? Yeah, and unless he actually feels very passionate about something, and then that gas butt just he don't give a fuck. He goes.
Oh, trust me, we get it. We get it in our DWO chat. Usually, it's fairly quiet, but man, if he feels a certain way about something, you're gonna fucking hear about it.
Balls to the wall. But anyway, so this is something else that we talked about in this chat. Magnificent. We'll go ahead and start with you two and go clockwise, and then in the next one we'll go back around. When it comes to, people always want to talk about this talent was wasted, right? Doesn't matter where they come from, AEW, TNA, WWE, when somebody leaves who the majority of fans feel like didn't get what they deserved, that's always a hot topic whenever they're cut or they walk away, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. And you brought up Nick Namath. So what we were talking about in the Walmart chat was, there comes a point in time where everyone has to realize you're just a mid-carder. Uh-huh. Now here's what, and I want to get your guys, if you guys have any examples of who this might be. There are people, I think Dolph Ziggler, at this point, we have to admit, Dolph Ziggler, Nick Namath, whatever, he's just a mid-carder. He is. I mean, he hasn't made that much of an impact in TNA, no pun intended, for the numbers to jump up or whatever. But here's something else, man. I just said that. Did anybody else get this feeling in their stomach like, ooh, mid-carder? Why do we look at it like it's a bad thing when we have guys like Rick Rude, who never had a major world championship and mattered? We had guys like Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, who never had a major. Obviously, both of them had, you know what I'm saying when I mean major. I mean the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, big gold. I'm talking the WWE title, the big title championship runs. Yes. Plenty of people out there who never got a shot at either one of those. And yes, sure, you can make an argument for Rick Rude's little title reign for that one title that they made, whatever. That don't count in my opinion. But go to Jake the Snake Roberts. Go to all these different guys who made the mid-card word matter. Why do we make these people feel like shit for being mid-carders? You understand what I'm saying? And it gets to a point where you got to remember, one point in time, and still to this day, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Macho Man had one of the, if not the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. People can make a legit push, and you can't be wrong whether you agree with it or not. You can say that was one of the greatest, if not the greatest match of all time, and it'd be true whether you agree with it or not. And they were doing it for the Intercontinental Championship. So what I want to ask you all here now is, do you think that is what I just said accurate? And do you have any examples to prove your point on whether it would be or not? Because I feel like if we actually sat down and stop making these people feel like shit for being mid-carders, everything would, because again, it's not a bad word. I feel, Mr. Magnificent. What do you think, man?
No, I agree with you. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a mid carder. I mean, some of my fondest memories, as I said, growing up with wrestling, was Intercontinental Championship battles. It was. I mean, I
Yeah.
loved Mr. Perfect. I loved Bret Hart when he was IC champion. Michaels when he was IC champion. It just felt like it was. They were still hungry and they were still clawing and fighting for something. And that was that first, like, real, the Intercontinental Championship really felt like they were taken seriously then. That was a huge step. And I don't know when that became a bad word, being a mid carder. I guess that people took that as, you can't main event. But to me, sometimes, when they get to that level of, like, Cody, for instance, now that he's finished his story, I feel like that the whole thing's kind of cooled off. It was very, very interesting, a lot of eyes and everything like that.
Mhm.
Obviously, Cody still has followers and they have all their viewers, but it was a much hotter storyline when he was trying to get there versus when he gets there. And I feel like some of that rubs off when they get to the next level. I
And
prefer
this is
mid carder.
something that we talk about in the Walmart chat as well. We all know why the story cooled off is because Cody, unless Cody is injured, he's not losing that strap until we find out what The Rock gave him. I bring that up all the time in the Walmart chat. That is the whole reason why The Rock slid him whatever that item might have been. You know what I'm saying? So you have no reason to think he's going to lose it. There's that sense of
Yeah.
danger really isn't there. So yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, for sure. So Eric, Big Rig,
Yes.
Mike said something about he didn't know when it became a bad word. Do you have any thoughts on that? When did the words mid Carter sound like a negative thing?
Um, when WWE stopped giving a shit about the mid card titles, if you don't build any stories around them, who cares?
Yeah.
Like you have to. You can have whoever's holding the title and have them go out there and put on a couple matches, but man, if you don't build some good storylines around it, people are not going to give a shit.
Yeah.
And I think we saw it when Gunther won the Intercontinental title. He rebuilt that thing, man. I mean, I hadn't given a shit about the Intercontinental title for years before he had it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But how do you think how do you think Logan Paul's doing with the United States Championship?
I hate him, so I think he's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Um,
Fair enough.
I mean, I genuinely despise him, but he's a good chicken shit heel. He's obviously athletic. I have my own personal issues with him being a champion so quickly and everything like that, and that's because I feel like he never really paid any dues to get there. Like he was
Well, no,
just
he didn't. It's not that
he,
you don't feel that he didn't pay any dues to get
and
there. None.
that's my
Yeah.
biggest issue with him. Like
Yeah.
I understand why he's the champion. I get that. He brings in a lot of eyes,
Yeah.
a lot of casual eyes, whatever. But it's not for me. I feel like if you're a champion on national television, you got to put in the work to get there, not just train with Shawn Michaels for 6 months.
Sure. So what is your opinion? Something that really bothers me about AEW is they named two of their mid card titles after the channel that it was on.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That bothers me a lot.
Me too.
How do you think to me it's kind of like using the term North American in NXT. Can we fucking stop it? I don't know. It feels like even the names now have gotten lazy. How do you think the impact of the name of the title really affects how much it means? Because I don't think the whole 24/7 title was ever going to have a shot at being cool, even if it was cool, because it was named the 24/7 title. It was just a hardcore championship without the word hardcore in it. In anybody that has that sense of history is going to know that. Do you think the name has any effect on the effectiveness of it? And as Cephas goes and gets his 24/7 championship,
He's so mad at you right now.
Honestly, I don't really. I don't really think too much into the names. Like I said,
Okay.
it's for me. It's the stories. Like, okay, we'll use AEW as an example. Miro as the TNT champion was a fucking awesome run. Him running through people, like, great story, awesome. And then
Jade with the TBS.
Jay with the TB, like, and then I think it was Sammy Guevara won it off him and had a fucking atrocious run because he wasn't a good champion. The storylines were terrible, and it made the TNT championship feel like shit. I don't care what it's called. You could call it the fucking dollar store championship. Like it all depends for me. That I'm not saying this is everybody. For me, it depends on who is the champion, how they carry it, storylines around it.
Divas Championship didn't bother you?
The what?
The Divas Championship didn't bother you?
I was a fucking teenager then, so no, not really. I just wanted to fucking look at girls. So
Fair enough.
I
Fair
mean,
enough.
now, like, yeah, it's fucking lame.
We were the
Super
demographic.
lame.
Yeah, like it's super lame. But back then, no, I could have given two shits. It has to be really lame for me to hate the name of a title. Like, I don't mind the North American Championship in NXT. I think that's I think one of the things that, like, I understand why they do it, but it also kind of bothers me is how they have, like, the WWE Championship and the Women's WWE Championship. Why can't we?
Yeah.
It's still the Like, I get they have to do it because they're two separate things, but people are smart and creative. We can't come up with something other than just putting women's in front of everything. You know what I mean? It's weird.
Right.
As progressive of a company they are too, you'd think they'd come up with something.
The reason why I don't like the name North American Championship, and I'll say this, and then we'll get to see Seth on his opinion. The reason why I don't like the North American Championship name is because we have a United States champion. So all you just did was say, "Hey, this championship right here, yeah, we got a United States championship, but this one covers the whole continent." To me, that's because I overthink shit. Now I have
but you also
mind,
the Intercontinental Champion, which is.
but it sounds cool, Rig. It
technically the
sounds
world
cool.
champion.
It's got history.
It sounds edgy. That's the point. It makes you think intercontinental, not one continent.
Now, what if the World Championship becomes the Galaxy Milky Way Championship?
You mean the Universal?
You mean the Universal Championship? God, I hate that name.
The WWE Universal World Galaxy Nutmeg Championship. How about that?
Yeah, not a fan of that.
All encompassing.
The multiverse.
Savas, what do you think, man? What's your opinion on this? As a normally neutral party, what is your opinion?
Let me start my stance by asking you a question. Off the top of your head, without Googling anything, can you name 3 matches from WrestleMania 12?
WrestleMania 20?
12.
12.
Yes, 12.
Sean and Brett. I should know more than that, but I don't. Off the top of my head, no.
See, now when you go back and you look at that, one of the few matches that sticks out to me is what somebody would consider mid-card, and I'm going to use that particular person's point of view about mid-card to make my point, and that's Roddy Piper versus Goldust in their backlot brawl. When asked about his stance on being a mid-card wrestler and the fact that he never won the WWE Championship, he's like, let me tell you like this: wrestling is a car, okay, and the wrestlers are the transmission. The engine is the fans. The transmission is what gets the car down the road. The wrestlers get the car going, right? And what that means is we got to be the gear that we are needed to be when we are called upon. He's like, we got to all work together. He's like, there's no such thing as mid-card. He's like, you can be the very first match, the second match, the middle match, the last match. If you make it matter, they're going to remember it. You look at that WrestleMania 12 card, there are 8 matches on there, okay? You were only able to pull out literally one of them, and that's the 60-minute Iron Man match. There's a ton. There's a Stone Cold match. There's an Undertaker match. There's an Ultimate Warrior match. I mean, but there's also the Huckster versus Nacho Man. So there's there's a lot. My point of the matter is everyone talks about how iconic that match between him and Goldust is, and that was a mid-card title, and it was so iconic because people gave it time and gave it story. Same with there was one of my favorite Attitude Era storylines. It was at the end of the Attitude Era, but I think it still counts. X Factor with Albert and Just Incredible, and Just Incredible's kind of on my shit list right now, but Just Incredible and X-Pac, there's some stuff that I remember from them because they gave them a good storyline. You know what I mean? How many other factions came in that we forgot about? I remember X Factor,
Nobody has brought this up yet, and this is what I always go back to. And if you really want to know how much it can matter, Stone Cold and The Rock, everyone remembers them fighting for the world title. They started with the Intercontinental title. And it seems like everybody forgets that aspect because the world title stuff was so important, not only in wrestling history, but at society. You got Stone Cold and The Rock shirts and Goldberg shirts and NWO shirts sold at Walmart for years because of this stuff that was being put out. So it eclipses the fact that all started with the Intercontinental title. Stone Cold throwing the belt in the river. You know what I'm saying? Like that all started with a mid-card title. So it can be important, and I think it's something really, really important that is missing from the wrestling industry in general, just because it seems like anymore everybody's just like, oh, they never got a world title run, well then you wasted them. Not everyone can be fucking world champion. The guy on Stevens' shirt right now is never going to be world champion. Why is he never going to be world champion? Because he doesn't fucking need it.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Dude, I agree with that so strongly because that is, like you said, at the beginning of all this, you were like, everybody, anytime somebody goes from one company to another, they're always like, they fumbled them, they misused, whatever. Not just because they're your favorite doesn't mean they're going to be a world champion. Yeah. And some people can have that argument. Like, some people do get fumbled, sure. But it's not everybody. Yeah. Like you just said, Danhausen, never going to be a world champion, but the dude gets himself over and he's entertaining as shit. So find out how to do that. If you can't get to the world title picture, I'm not saying you have to be Danhausen, but people get themselves over all the time. You just got to find the best way to do it.
Know your role, man. The Rock wasn't just bullshitting. Know your role and shut your mouth. Let him be the main event guy while you go off and fight Val Venus for the European Championship. You know what I mean? Like, there are roles to be defined in different stages of wrestling. As much as I love to see a Will Ospreay versus a Daniel Bryan, I am way more excited to see a Danhausen versus Paul Walter Hauser, which is what we're going to see in Iowa on June 22nd with Pro Wrestling Revolver.
Next Saturday.
Yeah, this next Saturday. I can't wait for this shit. It's going to be so fun.
Yes. Next Saturday for them, but for the people watching, this was like probably a month and a half ago. But it's fine.
It is what it is.
It's fine. So, how, Mike Magnificent, how old are you?
44.
44. Okay, so did you watch any old ECW, or have you gone back and watched old ECW?
I would catch it like I felt like it was on so random.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't watch it consistently enough to really follow the storylines and stuff. So I have gone back and watched a lot of the iconic stuff. And
did you grow up
in
documentaries
and see a match or see people and be like, okay, I want to know more about them or.
Yeah. Did you grow up in the Ohio Valley area?
Yeah, I grew up in Northern Kentucky.
Northern Kentucky. Okay. So you're right there on the I-75 line along with me. Okay. So the reason why I brought this up is because ECW, even to the point when they got on TNN, you didn't really know they existed. But down this side, the Southern Ohio, Northern Kentucky area, ECW was prominent as fuck. Can you attest with that? Like we all knew they were going to be in Dayton, even though we never saw them on TV at all. We all knew they existed because they stayed in this area in particular. Dayton especially. Dayton was a hotbed for ECW. They did a lot of stuff. The infamous Dudley's Heat Wave incident happened at Hara Arena in Dayton. ECW was prominent around here. And you could make an argument that every title in ECW was mid card. Yet it was just as important as anything else. You know what I'm saying? Is there any, do you think in today's day and age, and then we'll get off the whole mid-card thing, the indies can have, because for those who don't know, the DWO goes to a ton of indie events, mainly Pro Wrestling Revolver from what I've seen, which I will be going with them in August to one.
Yeah, buddy, August 24th.
Oh, yeah.
Which, by the way, you do know that's a double show now, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
I've already blocked it all. It's completely put away. It's in my calendar. I'm going to be there with you guys.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Do you think there could be any independent promotion today in today's world that could take that mid-card status that ECW used to have and make it as important to where the whole promotion is that good mid-card as ECW was growing up in our area?
We're going to sound like shills here.
I say you're putting the ball in the tee for me here.
I do research.
Yeah,
better.
Absolutely. And the company we always talk about, Wrestling Revolver, I think does such an excellent job of that. Several things we talked about tonight, nostalgia stuff, things like that. I just everything they do, whether it's a scramble match, which we talk about a lot, to just call them humor matches. With people like
Break that down. Break that down for people who don't know. What is a scramble match?
A scramble match is just where you have, a big group of people, say like, 6 is usually a hot number, 6-person scramble. So it's every man or woman for themselves. And, the first person to get a pin or submission wins. And a lot of times, you see it done and it's kind of just, 2 people in the ring at a time, do their move to each other, roll out, the next 2 roll in, lather, rinse, repeat. Something about the way Revolver does it. It feels like everybody's always involved. There's always something going on. It's meaningful. Yes. So it's just something that's so like taken for granted, like kind of a throwaway match. Like, hey, we got these extra people. Here it is. Here's a scramble match. To where they're putting on bangers with scramble matches.
Yeah.
But they do. The last show we went to, the second match of the night was for the world title. And it didn't take anything away from it. It's just everything else that preceded was just as good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, they could probably not have any. I mean, you have to have belts to have something to fight for. I mean, and not to say that they're meaningless, but every match that they're putting on would headline any other promotion.
Yeah. And they're telling stories without telling stories too. Like we were talking about on an episode we did last night with a guy that wrote a really cool book, but that's besides the point. We were talking about how Jake Chris got the backslide over. He may have fought 6 different people while defending that championship, but he beat 5 of those 6 people with that backslide to the point where it was like, okay, this person may not have came back after this particular match, but we got a little bit of story told there. So when we got to these crescendos of matches that really mattered, it was, when that backslide started to hit, we were like, oh shit, here we go, backslide. You know what I mean? And that there's that level of storytelling that they have, I think, that makes them stand out. And, in this age where, WWE is going to Netflix, who's to say that, Amazon ain't like, you know what, let's pick up Revolver and give them some money and see what they can do. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's going to be a ton of people that want in this particular market. So who knows?
Greg, I saw you got something to say, but before you do real fast, I just want to touch on what Cephas just said.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope that Raw being on Netflix does nothing but open doors for every single company on earth to go to streaming. Every single company. The death of cable is upon us. We need to pull the trigger and walk away from Spectrum, DirecTV, all of it, and everything just needs to be streaming. Now, there's no reason why we should not be there at this moment. The only reason why I'm saying that is because that is a pet peeve of mine right now. I am so tired of not everybody on earth at this point should be on streaming. Everyone. So hopefully this opens the door. It is a mad success. And everybody goes to streaming from this point on. Because, man, imagine just being like sitting down on a random Thursday and you're like, you know what? I got 4 shows to catch up. I'm at home. It's 2:00 p.m. and I got nothing to do. I'm watching wrestling till I go to bed and just hit play and let that motherfucker roll, man. I can't wait for those days. Anyway, I'm getting off my soapbox. Rig, I saw you had something to say, bro. Chime in.
First of all, I second that strongly because cable option, the fact that I still like, I don't want to buy cable just to watch wrestling. It's too expensive.
Yeah.
It's dumb.
Yes.
I don't watch anything else on cable. That's the only thing I watch. So, yeah, it's irritating. I haven't watched wrestling live in months, be honest with you, because I could not afford YouTube TV anymore. It was too much. And even Sling, like, you can only get half of the wrestling that you want to watch, or you got to buy both, and it's just whatever.
Neither one of them has Fox. Neither one of the fucking Sling options has Fox. Are you fucking kidding me? You mean to tell me that you're not going to give it to me because I can get it with my cheap ass antenna up here that only works 5 times out of 10?
The antenna that I can plug into my 2024 TV. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, I gotta get my train of thought back here.
Sorry.
Steve has said this multiple times about Revolver. It has like an early ECW ROH feel to it, you know, and these guys, you know, we've already touched on it, but just they tell stories. I mean, they could honestly run a show that has 0 title matches on it, and I'd still go. It's that, you know what I mean? Like the last show we went to, didn't have the Remix champion, didn't have their tag champions on it, and it was still a banger of a show.
Yeah,
and that's talking about Samurai Del Sol and Lince Dorado, who are their tag champs right now, good lucha things, and Gringo Loco, who's one of the hottest freaking stars on the indies, as their Remix champ. None of them were on the show, and it was a banger. And like, you know, they usually have 8 matches. They do 4, little intermission, another 4. And we're always sitting there before the show like, what's going to open? What's going to main event? I don't know. I don't really care because it's going to be awesome either way. Honestly, sometimes we're more excited to see what the opener is because every single opener that we have seen from Wrestling Revolver has been a main event level match. And it just doesn't stop. It just keeps going, and I love it. I love it. Cannot say enough good things about it.
I'm so excited.
Go ahead, Seth.
I'm so excited you're coming. I'm excited for you to get to see it front row, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up. When the Christs were doing Rockstar Pro, and we won't get into the ending. It's not necessary. When the Chris brothers were doing Rockstar Pro with Ohio is for Killers, I went to 2 shows and I had an amazing time. And I wasn't really watching at that point. And I had seen the Wyatt family for the first time. I think it must have been Survivor Series. I can't tell you what year. I know it was probably like 9 years ago because I think me and my wife were just started dating at that point in time. But I saw the Wyatt family and they drew me back in. I was like you, Mike, Magnificent. I take breaks, like years long breaks from wrestling. And I was in a years long break at this point. And the Wyatt family brought me back. And there's somebody that I used to be friends with, and I think he might even go to Wrestling Revolver shows now. His name's Robbie. He was a hardcore devoted Rockstar Pro fan, and he dragged me on. I think it was called 6. It was when they were doing the pay-per-views. I don't know if they're still doing that or not anymore, but I think the pay-per-view was called 6. And DJ Hyde and I think it was Dave Christ had a barbed wire table island match. I think what it was called. And I remember, dude, I had Jeremy Ganger, who is now a legend for saving people's lives in the Dayton shooting. He had a match, I think, on that one. That was the first time I saw him. Man, there's something about indie shows that you just can't experience it anywhere else. And I definitely got that vibe when it was Rockstar Pro. Now, the reason why I haven't been to a Revolver one is because, believe it or not, those who know me, this might sound weird, but I am an extreme introvert. It's not a joke. I don't leave this room except for one person, and she's in the other room right now. Like, that's the only time I leave this room. I don't leave this house. I don't go out. However, I'm 38 years old now. I need to start experiencing life while I can. So I hit up Seth. I was like, bro, next time you guys are there, let me know. And it just so happens, as of this moment, Matt Riddle's going to be there. So it's like, it's crazy that there's this thing 40 minutes from me that matters so much. And this doesn't even matter just in this area. Like, people that Rick just listed off are worldwide stars 40 minutes from me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I gotta go, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. But as we wind down here, I usually ask some kind of like top 3 question to close with. But this one I'm going to do a little bit differently here. Now, you guys are a stable. And for those that don't know, a stable is a group of 3 or more people under one banner. So we got 3 people in the DWO with me right here, right now. So instead of me asking you to choose your top 3 stables, I'm not going to do that. No. DX, NWO, 4 Horsemen. You can only keep one. Cephas, I'm putting you on this blast first and foremost. Which one stays? DX, NWO, or the 4 Horsemen?
DX.
This is where the Jeopardy music will play.
DX. DX all day.
DX.
Here's why. The only person who necessarily mattered out of the 4 Horsemen, besides maybe Arn and Tully, was Flair. No offense to anyone else who was there. No one gave a shit about them. Okay? In most iterations, it was Ric Flair. Okay? So Ric Flair would have done fine without the Horsemen. So I'm okay with the Horsemen disappearing. And NWO, short of, the first part, I was just annoyed by most of the NWO. You know what I mean? When they started adding, Virgil and stuff like that, which was relatively near the start, it just kind of lost a lot of thunder for me. So for me, DX all day, man. And DX, for me, also has different runs. It has the OG run, then the run where Triple H took over and brought in all his cronies, and then the redo where it was just them being PG. Then the redo where they brought Road Dogg and Billy Gunn back. I'm all for all that. You know what I mean? So I DX all day.
But without DX, without the NWO, can there be a DX? And that's kind of one of those multiverse questions, because DX was only created because Shawn Michaels was pissed off that his buddies were in another company. Granted, that's a small portion of the story, but does DX become a thing without the Monday Night Wars? And the Monday Night Wars started because of the NWO. Now, there's no right or wrong answer here. I'm just giving you a complex question that there really is no answer to.
There is an answer. There's an answer. WrestleMania 32. DX beat the shit out of NWO.
Oh, God.
Sting went down to Triple H like he was supposed to do. WCW failed. NWO failed. DX is still here. There's a clear winner.
Okay. Fair enough. Rig, same question to you. Which one stays? NWO, DX, or 4 Horsemen?
Man, I hate to sound similar, but I kind of had the same thing, because it was like, if you're telling me, which one's better, DX or NWO, it's got to be DX, just because NWO became, every other week there were 3 people joining one side or the other, and it was too much by the end of it. And you're right, they did spark the Monday Night War, and DX, started because of that and everything. But in terms of my favorite, I'd have to go. I know our freaking logo is modeled after the NWO, but
What?
DX.
I was about to bring that up too. No NWO, no DWO.
We'd figure it out.
We'd have been dead.
We're gonna get there eventually.
Fair enough.
Dad Generation
but
X.
DX, I just have so many great
Well, that's dirt.
memories of them, and I mean, I do have NWO too. It's a difficult question. It is, but
Yeah.
I would have to say I would say DX.
Fair enough. Mike, Magnificent. What do you say? DX, NWO, or Four Horsemen?
I'm gonna go with the NWO because
Ah!
I think the NWO to me kind of changed how we thought about wrestling. You know,
For those listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Cephas right now has his 24/7 championship over his head, hiding in shame at that answer.
The cone of shame.
and while I do agree with these guys that that the NWO got very, very convoluted over time, with who they were adding. Because, some weeks it'd be like, oh, this person jumping in, like, oh, yes. And the next person would jump in and you'd be like, but why? So, I think the original idea and kind of the, still living off the hype of the Hogan turn.
Yeah.
And I just,
The Hogan turn was iconic. There's that.
Yeah, I kind of package that in with that too, and just seeing Razor Ramon and Diesel, coming through and and I'm a sucker for a good invasion angle anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, NWO is still alive, bro. We got the LWO. So, I mean, there's still factions of the NWO actively wrestling, essentially.
Thank you guys for being on. But you were one of the first people who had me on last year in October, I think it was, to really help me kind of like establish that I was putting a product out, and really gave me the platform to start what I'm doing here. Probably when this drops, I think we'll be around like episode 31 or 32, somewhere around there. I'm not real sure yet what it's going to be. But none of those episodes, I think, would have had the launch that it did had I not had an opportunity to get on y'all's platform and really show like I can hold a conversation. Because I know a lot of people that were watching at that time, and that interview in particular, and no offense to any of the interviews I did before that, but that interview in particular, I think gave me an opportunity to show like I can be entertaining almost. So I'd at least want to thank you guys for that. I'm looking forward as fuck to hanging out with y'all. Cephas, obviously I've seen you a billion times, but you two, this will be our first time meeting at this event at the end of August, man. We're going to have a blast. Forewarn, and Cephas can tell you this because he's been to an event with me. I yell a lot. Like, I'm not quiet.
I lose my voice at damn near every Revolver show.
Yes,
I was about to say, you're just going to make our corner extra obnoxious. That's all you're doing.
Yes. And I'm loud as fuck in person. Like, you have no idea how loud I am in person. It is a problem. I have to voice control constantly because I'm Hispanic, so we're like naturally just But so yeah, I'm looking forward to that with you guys. And again, man, just thanks for being cool ass dudes. So Cephas, we'll start with you and we'll make our way around, plug socials, all that good shit, and then we will call it a nizite.
Oh man, I'm not really the social plugger, really, but I mean, if anyone wants to follow me individually, I'm at Wrestling T-shirt Guy or Mr. Wrestling Shirt on X. But I'm on every social media. But for the most part, I'm more concerned that you guys hit that subscribe button on the Rose Show and that subscribe button on the DWO podcast. That's what I'm most wanting out of you guys.
I concur, Rig.
Yeah. As always, we've been the DWO podcast, and you can check us out on all the socials at DW_podcast, Facebook at the DWO podcast, TikTok at DW_pod. You can get that dad merch at Pro Wrestling Tees and T Public. Yeah, I got that thing down like a New Age Outlaws entrance at this point, which is another reason I love DX. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages.
Oh yeah.
Every audio platform too.
Yeah, we're on all the audio platforms. Check us out on there if you feel like listening. Don't want to look at our ugly mugs, at least mine.
Whoa.
Mr. Magnificent is the handsome one. Let's be real. But
he is
man,
pretty as fuck. Yeah,
this has been an absolute blast, dude. Thank you so much for having us on. I've been pumped about it all week, so glad we got to do it.
Yes, sir. Magnificent. Anything you'd like to say in closing, my man?
Don't follow me on social media. I'm boring. Anything I post is
Yeah, don't.
anything I
My
post is
personal
true.
page has nothing to do with
Want to
the
see my dog?
DWO. I probably should use it more for that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Am I the first person to ever say don't follow me on social media? I might be.
That could. I know on this show at least, yeah. But I think that could be in podcast history the first person that was like, "Don't fucking add me." But hey, I get it. I get it because somebody will add me, like somebody who is a Zooligan or somebody who is a Long Live Evil fan will add me because they see the podcast. But on the bio, it specifically says for personal use only. But they add me anyway. So now it's like this point where like, am I a dick and I don't add? Or do I just let them sit there? I don't know what to do. So
Leave 'em
yeah, I
on
totally
red.
get it.
That's why I love the follow function. If they add you and you don't add them back, that just makes them follow you. So that's fine.
Right. True that. True that. True that. All right, fellas. Well, I appreciate y'all being on, man. We'll do this again soon.
Hell yeah.